morning, everyone, and welcome back to Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. It is Monday, so of course we are going to talk all our reactions to Week 11. We've got some fun thoughts today, so go ahead and take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, and welcome into the chat, everyone. Mark, Donald, our fearless producer, Dustin, Terminal Sarcasm, Alex, Shaka, Zulu, Mark, Donald, Ryan. I mean, the list goes on and on. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you for listening there as well. Guys, we've got a fun episode today. I'm excited to talk about a lot of things. We're going to start things off not start things off. We're going to talk some news, as there was a big news story that I'd love to discuss. Then we're going to run through the injuries as custom here. Then we're going to do a little bit of an L lap because I think it's important. We have so many victory laps today. So many victory laps today that before we, start celebrating, I thought it'd be important to maybe talk about a valuable lesson and L I've taken, but the lesson I've taken from that L and how we can move forward and everything. So it's going to be a good show. We've got a lot of victory laps. I already saw a couple comments here. A couple of them we'll definitely be talking about. It's going to be fun. But before we get into that, I, of course, want to break down the biggest news story of this morning, and that is the fact that the Giants are going to go ahead and move forward with benching Daniel Jones, which we knew was going to happen, right? We talked about the injury guarantee on the contract. We talked about how the season is lost. We talked about how blah, 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 blah. It really made no sense for Daniel Jones to be the starter for the Giants anymore, especially with everything just kind of known from this year's draft cycle that they had already kind of moving on from. They wanted a quarterback in this year's draft. They were doing really whatever they could to not have Daniel Jones as their quarterback. So I'm honestly surprised he even made it this far. And credit to Daniel Jones for doing what he did. He had a couple big games this year, but for the most part, he just didn't do enough. I'm honestly not even sure if he really did enough to get a second chance, at least as a starter. I am curious at least to see what happens. Definitely not a big bucks starter, but maybe a cheap bridge somewhere. But I'm really, as we think about the league, not sure where that would even be. The surprise from this situation is not that Daniel Jones is benched, right? The surprise in this situation is the fact that they're actually going to Tommy DeVito. We talked about this all season, right? And I've got to, go ahead and apologize. We were prepared for this situation on Wake and Take. That much is true. But man, oh man, the amount of times I recommended picking up Drew Lock, stashing Drew Lock, holding on to Drew Lock for this very moment, and then for it to be Tommy DeVito, I've got to at least apologize a little bit and probably say we should have seen it coming, right? I mean, if the Giants were going to bench Daniel Jones because the season is lost, why would they put in a quarterback that could maybe win games in Drew Lock? They're going to go to Tommy DeVito because they want a higher draft pick. Why didn't we think about that? Why didn't we go as far as thinking that? But that's the point here, right? They are looking to tank Tommy DeVito. I know it was kind of a fun story. We like the whole Italian thing, but he really didn't show enough last year, at least in terms of being like a true starting caliber, winning NFL game type quarterback. I am curious to see. I know one thing we did see from him last year was the fact that he very often kind of just locked on to his first read. I am very, very, very curious to see how Malik Neighbors does rest of season, at least in terms of the volume department. Yeah, I know he's been getting volume, but this will be a different kind of volume, I think. But yeah, Tommy DeVito, starter, rest of season. Danny Dimes is done. And I don't know how many more dimes he's going to be getting rest of his career either. Now, that's that situation, right? I mean, there is a little bit more, I guess, that I'll discuss. I forgot to mention this, that Joe Schoen, the current GM, was in Colorado this weekend watching the Buffs, watching and scouting Shedeur Sanders. That is, of course, going to be the quarterback that this team is tied to the most in New York Giants. I just think it's funny that Joe Schoen thinks he's going to be the GM next year. But we'll see how that develops as well. But tons of speculation to come on that when we get closer to the draft season. We've got actual football happening. week 11 stuff to talk about. So I want to run through quick injury updates, just a list of everyone who got hurt that we need to monitor throughout the week and rest of season. Of course, we don't know the severity too much, so this is just literally a quick rundown, nothing too crazy. But Gabe Davis picked up a knee injury, hopefully not too serious, but you never like to see knee injury. Brian Thomas Jr. did get an injury, but it seems to kind of just be more of a banged up type situation. Puka Nacua got winded, also had a little bit of a rib injury, but was able to return to the game. It was almost looking like a Nico Collins thing. He caught the touchdown and got hurt on the touchdown grab. And it seemed like it was going to be pretty bad. He was down on the ground for a while. I was definitely pretty sad watching that, but it ended up being okay. He came back into the game, had a great game. So shout out Puka. Foster Moreau picked up a shoulder injury, which kind of left the door open for a little bit of a Juwan Johnson. Kyle Juszczyk, not that we really care. He did pick up a concussion, but then passed concussion protocol. Dawson Knox had his eye poked, but then came back. Khalil Shakir had a back and hip injury, but came back. So just kind of look for those two to be a little bit banged up the next couple weeks. Lab McConkey, shoulder injury, was able to return and have a great game, though. T. Higgins, back injury, was able to return and have a great game. Just mentioned T. Higgins. Tyjae Spears picked up a concussion, just something to monitor throughout the week. Darnell Mooney, we talked about last week, right? Came up with actually, we didn't talk about it. I wasn't there on Friday. We'll give an update on that. Should have updated on that. But yeah, Darnell Mooney, we didn't really get to go over injuries last week, but he did pop up on the injury report with an Achilles injury, was able to come off and play the game, and then picked up a hamstring injury in the game. You never like to see hamstring injuries, especially for the kind of faster, speedier wide receivers like a Mooney is. We'll monitor that throughout the week. You know, that is kind of a fun flex play we've been having here over the last few weeks, so just definitely a situation to monitor. We had 2 running back injuries in Las Vegas, Alexander Madison and Zamir White. So monitor that as it pertains to Dylan Lobb. Raheem Mostert picked up a hip injury, but was able to return. In Minnesota, Josh Oliver picked up an injury, so it is an ankle. We'll see how it goes. It might just be even more volume for TJ Hawkinson, which could be huge. And that is it for the injuries. And I guess I'll just go do a little bit of an update. I did see a question here in the chat before we get into all the reactions. The bunny is doing well. Just to keep it as short as possible, bunnies have very, very sensitive stomachs. They have to constantly eat. If they stop eating, it is really, really bad. You have like 12 to 24 hours to act to make sure that they start eating and go to the bathroom in particular. Their system gets very, very clogged, and if they don't go to the bathroom, they die. They just straight up die. They just fall over and die. It happened overnight. Like, we knew she ate dinner, but she wasn't eating breakfast, wouldn't eat any of her treats, and so we didn't know how long it had been. So we just kind of freaked out. We were like, we gotta go make sure we can get this sorted. So shout out Podfather for stepping up late notice. Didn't even ask him to. Just said, hey, I've got to cancel this morning, but he stepped up, volunteered even. So really shout out Matt for doing that. That was a fun episode. Got to listen to that while waiting. Or actually, I think at that point I might have been finally heading back. I think it was a little bit of both. But shout out him for that episode. And yeah, sorry I couldn't come and do the usual preview. I don't know if you guys saw, but I did tweet out. I did record a start-sit video on my own personal channel. So go check that out. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter now, but if I ever do miss, I'll try to at least record a little bit of a start-sit on my own channel that you guys can go find. That's at JFootballWine, as this little overlay shows. So we'll talk about some of those decisions right now, as literally one of the decisions on that show was to sit Jameson Williams, and this starts the L lap. As mentioned, I was going to start the reactions to this week with how mad I am at myself with a certain storyline, because as mentioned, we're going to have a lot of victory laps, but before we celebrate, we've got to, walk over the hot coals, and sitting Jameson Williams might keep me up at night for the next few years. There were multiple leagues I sat Jameson Williams, and multiple leagues I started him. As you guys know, I have way too much Jameson Williams. And I just looked at this game, this Lions-Jaguars game, and was like, well, granted, Sam Laporta wasn't announced out yet. But even then, even when Sam Laporta was announced out, I still, on my own fantasy teams, was like, I still don't. Because, this Jaguars team is putrid. The Lions, because as I talked about starting David Montgomery in this, that it was start David Montgomery, sit Jameson Williams, because the Lions were just going to run the ball crazy. David Montgomery was going to have 2 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs was going to have a big game as well. I just don't see much of a reason for Jameson Williams to be utilized at all. It's just this is just a cakewalk game for the Lions. I should have thought about it a little bit more, though, because, we know it. We all know it. The Lions are on a revenge tour. They don't care. They just want to go crazy. They just want to score their points. And I should have known better. The president of the Jameson Williams fan club sat him. And it might end up sinking my Scott Fishbowl season. We'll see. We'll see. I still put up a huge week, but I sat Jameson Williams and Scott Fishbowl for, I guess, technically Tony Pollard and or DeAndre Hopkins. Those would have been the 2 I was deciding between. And I don't know. It pains me, really, because I'm just such a Jameson Williams guy. And to see him in particular blow up on my bench pains me. And so I'm never sitting Jameson Williams again. That's my lesson learned. And the big lesson learned here is just to remain convicted. Because I just feel like there were a couple times, I've got another examples here, where I am right, and I just doubt myself just a little bit. And then it just doesn't make any sense. Like Anthony Richardson, for example. How many times did I go on this show and say, hey, let's buy Anthony Richardson? We believe in Anthony Richardson. But then in my damn starts this show, I said sit Anthony Richardson because it's a tough matchup. And, I want to see Anthony Richardson prove it. But I believe in Anthony Richardson, but still wanted to sit him. What am I doing? Got to put my chips where my heart is. And that's just a big lesson learned from this week in particular. It's a lesson I always teach myself every season, right? Just you know what you're doing. You know what you think. These players are really good for a reason. And yeah, it might not go right, but you've got to bet on them because they're going to blow up on your bench if you don't. Anthony Richardson, incredible game. Really shout out to him. We'll talk about that more later. We'll talk about Jameson Williams more later as well. And I want to talk about my Scott Fishbowl season, as I mentioned. No, hold on, because Roy is challenging me for president of the Jameson Williams fan club. And Roy, it's me. I'm sorry. I'll let you be secretary, vice president, maybe, if you send me a resume. But I'm president of the Jameson Williams fan club. But as Ryan, I had my best Scott Fishbowl week of the year, and it came at an important time. I did not get enough wins. I've got to be honest here. I did not get enough wins to make the Scott Fishbowl playoffs. Part of it injuries, part of it poor drafting, part of it not really working the waiver wire, if I've got to be honest with you. And it's I didn't get enough wins. I was 10-10 heading into this week. If you know Scott Fishbowl, you have to get 13 wins to make it. So even if I went 2-0, I was still going to be 1 win short. So it's going to come down to points. Currently, I'm about 100 people back, 60 points back from the playoffs, top 2,000, which make the playoffs. So it's possible. It's within reach. I needed a huge week. And I got a huge week. We'll see how it goes. But again, I sat Jameson Williams. For DeAndre Hopkins and or Tony Pollard, whichever way you want to spin it. I don't know how to spin it, really. Those were the two. Those are the 2 I played over him. And that might sink me as I only put up 235 points on the heels of Taysom Hill. And while on the L lap, Taysom Hill, I knew the big game was coming. I knew the big Taysom Hill game was coming. Shout out Fast Draft. Because Fast Draft launched their DFS game this week. You could draft 6 players, do the whole booster thing, and see how it goes for the week. And I took Taysom Hill in 3 of those. I knew it. I was like, the Taysom Hill game is coming this week. I don't know how I knew it, but I just knew it. And also, Taysom Hill is just one of those players. He's fun to take in DFS tournaments right now because you can get him kind of late, and he has such a massive ceiling. But I'm not even going to win on any of those teams in the Fast Draft DFS tournament because I left him on the 1X booster, which just brings us back to the conviction point. You've got to remain convicted, everyone. If you've got confidence in your takes, just stick to your guns, because it's so much better to lose off of your take and be wrong, but, still follow your gut and your own advice and your own thoughts and your own thought process, than it is to win or even still lose and just be disappointed at yourself by benching a player you believe in. So just take that with you, everyone. Remain convicted. We're about to victory lap, but before we victory lap, I just want you guys to know more about Fast Draft.
Oh, the NFL season is underway, and if you drafted on Fast Draft this summer, the Origins All-Rookie game, the Flex 4 game, check the live scoring, see where you are in the standings. You might be in line for a big payday. And no matter where you are in the world, you should have the Fast Draft app, because there's a custom Dynasty mock tool that's free to everybody with super sharp ADPs, and we're rolling out DFS tournaments throughout the year, and the 2025 tournaments will go live before any of us realize, oh my God, the 2025 season is upon us. Download Fast Draft, register, and you will be alerted as soon as these new contests are unleashed. Check it out on fastdraft.app.
Go check out Fast Draft. Seriously, DFS is out. So, if you haven't been able to scratch that Fast Draft itch, just wait. Probably tomorrow, maybe Wednesday. I'm not sure. I don't know when, but I'm assuming it'll be Week 12 DFS, and it's very fun. I'm not going to lie. As I mentioned, I'm upset at myself for drafting Taysom Hill and not boosting him. But this week, I'm boosting my conviction takes, and I'm coming home with the top prize in Week 12. It's going to be a fun way to end the season on Fast Draft. Go check it out, guys. Now, as mentioned, we're just victory lapping. We're going game by game, and we're recapping the good stuff. Because there's so much good stuff that happened this week. Week 11 was a fantastic week. It really, really was. Lots of fun storylines, lots of great takes, lots of great calls, and lots of great things to look out for. And we'll start with Thursday Night Football, because I wasn't able to make it Friday. Again, shout out Matt. And I started both Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson in the Trade Gods League, and I just want to pat myself on the back. I am still losing that matchup. I'm winning at least against the median, but John McGlynn is kicking my ass this week. But either way, there is room for both of these running backs. Austin Eckler catching those passes, Brian Robinson running and scoring touchdowns. I will say there is not going to be this successful of a game script for these running backs going forward. We have seen Brian Robinson catch multiple passes in games already this season. I think Austin Eckler was utilized in that aspect in particular because Brian Robinson was returning from injury, because he also only had 2 carries, right? So I am curious to see how the split I think that Brian Robinson will get worked in a little bit more. And this was kind of the week to start both. Austin Eckler still, of course, has receiving upside, but to see him only get 2 carries in this game is kind of concerning. At least in terms of him getting volume rest of season. But hey, for this week, wanted to pat myself on the back for firing both of them up, and excited to see what happens with Brian Robinson rest of season. Just still such a great value, such a great pick for this year. And speaking of a great pick, on this show, Saquon Barkley, we said you need to take at the 1-2 turn at the latest in your fantasy football drafts this season. In Superflex, you need to take him in round 2, early round 3 if he's still there, but you need to get Saquon Barkley. That was a big take from this season as it pertained to underdog drafting and drafting in general. The second round had so many landmines, and Saquon was one of the only ones we were really, really confident in. And man, he has just been phenomenal. What a player Saquon Barkley is. It looked bleak this first half. In fact, at halftime in this game, Austin Eckler had more points than Brian Robinson, Jaden Daniels, Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts combined. But then Saquon Barkley goes on a crazy streak the rest of the game, has 146 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, as well as 52 receiving yards, puts the team on his back to beat the Commanders. And just an awesome performance. So hopefully you guys did draft Saquon. What a value he was, even though he was early, still a value just based on the performance he's getting. And again, I gotta say, if you're new to the show, if you haven't been here in a while, I know that we're having some great storylines from around the league, but and especially now the Ravens are losing a little bit, and we've already seen the Eagles in the Super Bowl recently. But a Ravens-Eagles Super Bowl, that just would be so good this year. Saquon versus Derrick Henry. Jalen Hurts versus Lamar. The defenses, like that's the Super Bowl I want. I know it's probably one that no one else wants, but we've got to have that one. We're going to keep manifesting that Super Bowl, Eagles, Ravens. But shout out Saquon. And the next game I want to talk about is the Bears-Packers game. And where's this comment? I saw a comment looking for this because, of course, we're going to be talking about Christian Watson. Of course, we're going to be talking about Christian Watson. I can't remember what episode it was. I assume it was a market watch, but it might have been a waiver wire at some point or just a reactions. We talked about getting Christian Watson on your team a couple times because he's going to have a second half of season just tear, right? We have just seen it. We've seen it every single year now from Christian Watson. He just goes on a few game stretch where he's just absolutely unbelievable. And we're starting to see it. He leads the team in receiving yards this week, has some great spike plays, has a 60-year, finishes the day with 4 receptions for 150 yards, and that's just the beginning, guys. Christian Watson's season is happening. If you can still get him for a discount, do it. It's awesome. Oh, Roy, you make a good point. Now, but Christian Watson, absolutely killing it. I love to see it. And just love to see the Packers playing as well as they are. They barely win this game, which is another take-full victory lap here. But still, Christian Watson, unbelievable. Love the athleticism. Glad to see him healthy. Hopefully he keeps it up, and I think he will rest of season. I think we're going to get the Christian Watson just kind of not fantasy playoffs, but this weird week 12 range. I don't know why he always likes to go crazy during this time, but he does. And it's fun to see. Christian Watson's season is here, and it's going to be fun. And on to the Bears, as we talked about, they're going to look a little bit better. They're going to look better, but not only that, Rome Odunze is the wide receiver 1 in Chicago, and I can't believe that it's not more popular of a thought. Since the Bears bye week now, Rome Odunze has led the team in receiving yards in 3 out of 4 weeks. In this game, 6 receptions, 65 yards. And the connection with Caleb Williams is there. He leads the team in targets as well with 10. Rome Odunze is the wide receiver you want in Chicago. Keep buying him while you can. The ceiling game hasn't happened recently. We had that one earlier in the season. But there's going to be one at this point, and even if there isn't, you still need to be trying to buy him. You could probably conceivably get him for like a first right now, and I would be trying to do that. I want Rome Odunze at all costs. We talked about it last week in general by the Bears, as they're going to look a little bit better. They're just going to be more competitive. The season's lost. When the pressure is off, you can play ball. And that's what the Bears are doing. Rome Odunze, wide receiver 1. Caleb Williams getting points on the ground now. It's fun in Chicago. Get your Bears, but especially get Rome Odunze. And this is a great segue. Wesley asking, Rome or BTJ? And on to the Detroit-Jacksonville game. I think BTJ is going to be fine. Which one would I rather have? Rest of season, I'm assuming? It's really close. I really think they're both really, really good options. Sorry, breaking news apparently on this team as well. But focus. We'll get to that breaking news in a second. I'm slightly leaning Brian Thomas Jr., which we'll get to the takeaway, but because he's the only wide receiver in Jacksonville. It's just him. And we talk about the Tom Savage corollary at PlayerProfiler all the time. These bad quarterbacks like Mac Jones, they just lock on to the wide receiver 1. They just do. And now, apparently, breaking news, Gabe Davis, torn meniscus, expected to have surgery, which means even more targets for Brian Thomas Jr. So while I do believe Rome Odunze is the wide receiver 1 in Chicago, he does have target competition on a better offense. So it's very, very close. I just think that even the bad offense targets on Jacksonville, especially with no target competition, slightly, very ever so slightly, outweighs it rest of season. And that's my take from this game. Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be fine. 7 targets, 5 receptions, 82 yards. And they're starting to cook. Mac Jones still looks terrible. There was a touchdown that was called back, so that's still there on the table. Just get Brian Thomas Jr. if you can at a discount. I made a bad trade, I'm not going to lie. We'll maybe talk about it later. It was an trade still. I definitely lost it. I traded Devon Achane, Tony Pollard, and Josh Downs for James Cook, Brian Thomas Jr., and DeAndre Swift. So Brian Thomas Jr., I think, better than Downs, but it's close now. Downs had a great game. Swift is still better than Pollard, and Achane's better than Cook, but I think it might be closer than we think. Either way, Brian Thomas Jr. I think is going to have a great rest of season. I really do. I think he's just going to be locked on to. And I think he's going to be totally fine. So do not panic, and maybe even try to buy if you can get him at a discount if everyone's scared of Mac Jones, because Tom Savage made his fantasy wide receivers relevant. So can Mac Jones. And I just want to talk about the Lions again. And yeah, maybe I probably also want the Lions in the Super Bowl. And you're right, Roy. Like, maybe I can't call myself president of the Lions, of the Jameson Williams fan club if I don't want the Lions in the Super Bowl. But the Eagles-Ravens just sounds like such a great game. But these Lions, they're just so much fun. I mean, Jared Goff, 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. David Montgomery, 2 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs, over 70 yards and a touchdown. Amon-Ra, over 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jameson Williams, over 100 yards and a touchdown. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, what a football team these Detroit Lions are. And I mean, really, congratulations to anyone that has any feasible part of this Detroit Lions offense, right? Like, if you have Jared Goff, and if you've got Demont, I mean, come on. Like, if you've got Gibbs, if you've got Amon-Ra, if you've got J-Mo, just congratulations. What an offense to be a part of. So much fun to watch. The revenge tour really is something else. Poor Jacksonville, though. They did not have to do that. Like, they absolutely did not have to do that. They could have gone into this game and just ran the ball with David Montgomery. They could have gone into this game and ran the ball with Craig Reynolds and probably still won by 20. They did not have to do this to the poor Jacksonville Jaguars. I feel so bad for Duval. Like, I'm just watching all these touchdowns come in, and it's just like, in college, you get it, right? Like, you know, like, yeah, points kind of come into the equation here. I guess they kind of do in the NFC North as well. The tiebreaker is points for, but they didn't have to win 52-6. They did not have to do that at all. So anyway, Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be fine, especially since Gabe Davis is getting meniscus surgery. And the Detroit Lions are just something else. On to the Vikings Titans, because on my start-sit show, as we talked about the ones I was disappointed with, we did say sit Aaron Jones. And that one, you know, I think was kind of against consensus. I'm not sure. But Aaron Jones, all-purpose running back against a bad defense in Tennessee. And I said, well, not so fast. Tennessee's defense is kind of stingy. They just, for some reason, allow touchdowns. And, you know, that for some reason is because Will Levis turns it over a lot. But Aaron Jones was also banged up, and Will Levis looking a little bit better. And I just didn't really think that Aaron Jones was going to be needed in this game. And yeah, bing, bang, boom. 15 carries for 39 yards, and that's it. Cam Akers, 10 carries for 25, so that's cool to see. He also gets a receiving touchdown. And Sam Darnold, believe it or not, had a rushing touchdown. So, hey, if you sat Aaron Jones, you're welcome. And yeah, that's really it for this game. It was kind of honestly an awful game for Minnesota outside of Sam Darnold, right? I mean, hey, I'll give Sam Darnold his flowers. But mostly pretty proud of myself for sitting Aaron Jones. Will take that victory lap. And this will be a little bit of an L. You know, I'll be honest. I was very excited for this Tennessee Titans offense as it pertains to fantasy football this year. I didn't think they'd be a good team, but I thought they would be good for fantasy, right? I thought Will Levis would actually be good. I bet on him. And Scott Fishbowl, for example, he's my Scott Fishbowl quarterback. Well, one of them. Jada Daniels is my quarterback, but I have Will Levis. And I invested in Tony Pollard. I invested in DeAndre Hopkins, who's now a Kansas City Chief. I thought maybe Calvin Ridley. Not really. I wasn't too into Calvin Ridley. But Tony Pollard, Will Levis, D-Hop in particular, I was big on. D-Hop not even on the team. Tony Pollard been pretty good. Will Levis pretty bad. But this Tennessee offense in general just has not been good. It's just that was a bad take. I was wrong. But right now, Week 11, heading into Week 12, I ask you, the Wake and Take audience, will they be bad next year? I want to ask that question because I'm thinking about it. I don't know. I mean, the pieces are kind of there for them to be better. And I don't think I'm crazy for saying that. You could call me for crazy for saying that, but I think that Will Levis is starting to look a little bit better. 300 yards, a touchdown, and only 1 interception. Rushing a little bit here. Calvin Ridley looking okay. Nick Westbrook-Akine, apparently a fine role player, which we see time and time again. They're going to have a high draft pick. Say they draft one of the top wide receivers from this year's draft class. We're talking about a good weapon. They already have a good backfield. I don't know. I don't know if Will Levis is out. I think he's doing enough. We'll see how he closes out this season. But I might say right now, shout out our producer, Dustin. Tennessee's schedule is bad rest of season. It's a field of evergreen on Sleeper if you go check it out. So I might say right now buy Will Levis in Dynasty. In Superflex Dynasty, call me crazy. But I think that the takeaway shouldn't be like, oh man, I'm so sad that I was wrong about the Tennessee offense. It's that we might be right for the Tennessee offense next year. We really might. Because I think that Will Levis is starting to take a little bit of a step forward. He still has a long way to go. But I think the schedule is easy rest of year, that he'll keep his job. They'll use his draft pick on a wide receiver more than likely. Maybe bring someone in, maybe draft a offensive lineman and bring in a wide receiver. Who knows? But I think this offense will be someone we want next year. So I wouldn't mind buying Will Levis in Superflex Dynasty. I want to move on to the Dolphins-Raiders game because an important lesson on remaining convicted is also to be able to take new information and adapt. And it's weird and hard sometimes to find the line between adapting and remaining convicted. And I just want to say Brock Bowers was one that this offseason we weren't necessarily avoiding. I wasn't saying like don't draft Brock Bowers, but it was more of a, like if the value's right, you could take him. But I was kind of concerned. I was pretty heavy on Devontae Adams getting, being the alpha on that team. I felt that the Raiders would lock onto him a lot, and especially with Michael Mayer still there as well. Like I just didn't think that Brock Bowers would be the alpha in year one. I wanted him in Dynasty, don't get me wrong. But in terms of seasonal, I was not in on him. But week one, he went out there and dominated. In week one, we came on here and said he was the tight end one for the season, tight end one in Dynasty immediately. And that's just an important lesson, right? You have to know where to see it, and to see it immediately from Brock Bowers. It was nice to be able to take that and adapt our take on Brock Bowers. I made some trades for him immediately. It's just fun to see. And this guy is just so good. Just so good. 16 targets, 13 receptions, 126 yards, and a touchdown. An absolute alpha. More than just a tight end. The tight end one in Dynasty. Easy. Tight end one season. Brock Bowers, total stud. And an important lesson in remaining convicted while also adapting and where to draw the line. And on the Dolphins. Again, when can you adapt? When can you, draw a line? Like where can you find those things? And one takeaway at a lot this offseason was don't draft Tyreek Hill. There was no reason to draft Tyreek Hill at cost. In fact, sell him in Dynasty. At his age, he's just too risky for the cost, right? Like you could take Tyreek Hill and trade him for Cooper Kupp and multiple picks or players. And that type of discrepancy to me was ridiculous at his age, as high of a ceiling as he has. And we saw why, right? Without Tua, he struggled. But even with Tua this season, he still hasn't had much of a ceiling yet. But a few weeks ago, really, because even while Tua was out, we talked about buying Dolphins and it was desperate. But especially a few weeks ago, we talked about it in particular, you got to buy Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is a sleeping giant. And he still is, even after back-to-back touchdowns, or back-to-back games with a touchdown. But he's just so good, and we had to be buying these Dolphins. And Tyreek Hill was a player that we faded in the offseason, but adapted and said it was time to buy. And now we're reaping the rewards. And it's just important to be able to adapt like that as we go through the season, as we take in new information. And I just hope that a lot of you were able to heed that advice, did get Tyreek Hill onto your team as we push for these championships, because he's going to be a huge part of it. The Dolphins are alive. Tua, 3 touchdowns, while Devon Achane also has a rushing touchdown. Jonnu Smith, 2 touchdowns and 100 yards. I mean, incredible stuff coming from the Miami offense now that Tua's back. And that's why you just got to hold your nose and buy those assets that no one wants anymore, like Tua when he was hurt, and Tyreek Hill and the rest of the Dolphins offense. And I might even go so far as to say now you could probably buy Jalen Waddle. Ew, maybe. I don't know. It depends on the price, but I think that there's going to be a game here or there as well for him. And as we talk about why you should have sold Tyreek Hill for Cooper Kupp plus, why not talk about this Rams-Patriots game? Because this Rams pass offense, what a call, right? We talked about it all off season. The wide receiver you want from Los Angeles is Cooper Kupp, mostly because of cost, because we said that both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp would be top 15 wide receivers. But the fact that you could get Cooper Kupp way later was one of the best draft picks you could make this year. I had like a 40% exposure to Cooper Kupp on Underdog. I was getting this guy every single time. And I'm just so proud of myself for it. I got Matthew Stafford in a lot of leagues as well. This Rams passing offense is just incredible. And it's just important. It's a good lesson to remember that even as a player's old and you have a bad couple seasons, to remember who they were and what's still there. In Cooper Kupp's case in particular, he had one of the best seasons we'd ever seen from a wide receiver, but had an injury and was making his way back. This year, he was fully healthy. This year, Matthew Stafford was back. This year, the offensive line was getting better. This year, the run game was going to get better. This year, the defense was worse, so they were going to have to pass more. Everything made so much sense to get the Rams pass offense, and Cooper Kupp in particular. 2 touchdowns and 100 yards in this game, a game where Puka Nacua also has over 100 yards and a touchdown. Stafford over 4 touchdowns. Just awesome to see it. Love the Rams passing offense. And I would even go so far to say is there's still a value. I think Matthew Stafford is a very fun target for the rest of the season. It's Stafford, right? With Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. And again, shout out Puka Nacua for coming back from that injury and doing what he did, right? And in this game, Drake May looks great. And I'm going to come back to this take later because I want to talk about Drake May. But my take all offseason as well was that every rookie quarterback taken in the first round this year is going to hit. And I recommended in every underdog draft, in every draft in general, in every dynasty league, I said time and time again, trade Caleb Williams for any rookie quarterback plus, trade any quarterback for any rookie quarterback plus, and take it in the first round. And just see, because these guys are all going to hit. They all got the right landing spot. And we talked about it. I mean, we talked about every single one, what the case is. And yeah, maybe the bull case doesn't always hit, but this year it has so far. And we'll come back to this later because I'm not going to lie, getting worried about the Falcons. But I don't want to talk about that now. I want to talk about Drake May because the case for him was, hey, the Patriots have no one. They need a Josh Allen. They need someone that can put the team on the back, do it all, be a superhero, and just play ball. And Drake May, best comparable player on PlayerProfiler, Josh Allen. It just has all the intangibles, can do it all. And we're just seeing what he brings to the table. 40 pass attempts, 30 completions, 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, only 1 interception, 27 rush yards as well. Multiple receivers with over 50 yards and 5 receptions. Kendrick Bourne gets the touchdown, but Demario Douglas and Hunter Henry still getting there on a consistent basis. The run game looking better as well. It's just awesome to see from Drake May. And we talked about it all the time. Get Drake May all season. We talked about it on the waiver wire show. If he was available in your Superflex, get him. But I even said in single QB, get him. Because of his profile, he is startable in single QB. He has a rushing floor on top of just the ability to do it all. And it's just awesome to see. Shout out Drake May. And the Patriots were playing it basically perfectly. I got to say, basically perfectly. I don't know what more they could do other than, I think they pulled the plug on the Jacoby Brissett situation at the exact perfect time. And I think that they played the media perfectly, right? Like, you know, like Drake, everything, really, every step of the way, right? So shout out brand new coaching staff, Gerard Mayo and just crew, right? Just shout out this Patriots. I really think they're stepping in the right direction. And it's awesome to see them like put up these awesome fights and lose, right? Because that means they're still going to get a really high draft pick. And they are also in the sweepstakes for a top wide receiver for Drake May. So while Drake May is still expensive, probably still worth buying in Superflex. And on to the next game, the Saints Browns. Again, called the Taysom Hill game, knew it was going to happen, but I got to get better at the fast draft boosters. But just what a game from him and the Saints, really. I mean, all the injuries, no Rashid Shaheed, no Chris Olave. All you have is Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara. Derek Carr still 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. Taysom Hill 3 touchdowns. Alvin Kamara just killing it. 4 receptions as well as 67 rush yards. MVS getting another big touchdown. Just shout out the Saints for not losing faith. They've got to stop winning games. But I'm happy that they're still able to score points and fight through this adversity. And I like this offense now. Like Taysom Hill is the funniest player in NFL history. I don't think there's a funnier player than Taysom Hill. Just his profile, who he is, his age, and he just always dominates. It's hilarious. It really is. So you got to like the Saints. Even as much as I hate the Saints, you got to like the Saints right now. I mean, you like Alvin Kamara, you like Taysom Hill, and Derek Carr is just Derek Carr. If you have a strong opinion about Derek Carr, either way, right? Like if you love Derek Carr or if you hate Derek Carr, why do you feel that way? The definition of an indifferent quarterback. But anyway, love the Saints. Shout out Taysom Hill. Awesome stuff from them. And Jameis Winston, awesome game, but can't pull off the revenge game win. 395 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And Jerry Jeudy, 11 targets, leading the way, 142 yards and a touchdown. But don't fret, David Njoku still got there, 9 receptions, 81 yards. Elijah Moore, 6 receptions, 66 yards and a touchdown. Shout out random Instagram live enjoyer. They asked who they should start. I think it was like Josh Downs, and it was some bad options. And I was like, just go pick up Elijah Moore and stream him, and he did. And hey, it worked. And even Cedric Tillman, only 3 receptions for 47 yards, but hey, 8 targets. It's awesome to see. This Browns offense is so much fun with Jameis Winston. But I do want to see him win because I think Dustin, you sent me an interesting text this morning that we might have another Geno Smith situation on our hands. He has to win. I just want to say, yes, it's an awesome story for Jameis Winston, and he's getting fantasy points, but he has to win to keep his job. I do think that because we saw Joe Flacco last year take this team to the playoffs, essentially same team. No Amari Cooper, but still, right? So he has to start picking up these wins. I think this would have been a good, if beating the Saints would have been a really good step in that direction of taking the starting job. I think it's still definitely possible and a great story, and love Jameis Winston, but I want to see him start to get wins before I say he could take that starting job going forward, before we have a whole nother Geno situation on our hands. But hopefully we do, because man, it's awesome. It's so awesome. Shout out Jabu. Eating L's, but it's still kind of fun. And back to the whole conviction take. Again, just that whole Anthony Richardson. I doubted him, right? Just doubted. Tough matchup. They've killed his confidence. But no, he's a baller. He just plays ball. He doesn't care. In fact, he was fired up by the fact that the Colts organization did him dirty. 20 of 30. Oh my God. 272. Woo! A touchdown. Oh my God. No interceptions. 2 rushing touchdowns against the Jets. Has done it, ladies and gentlemen. Anthony Richardson's done it. He's here. Hopefully, right? We'll see if he can stack it up. But hey, above 50% completion percentage, above 250 yards, no interceptions, multiple touchdowns. This is what we've been waiting for, A-Rich. Game-winning drive. Everything. So shout out A-Rich and shout out Dustin. I mentioned the Instagram live start sit, and this Sunday Dustin joined me. So if you guys follow us on Instagram at Roto Underworld, we do a start sit stream on Sunday mornings as well. PodFiler does it on YouTube. There's one on TikTok as well. But me and Dustin, we went on this Sunday, and I was expressing doubts in Josh Downs, little concern. Anthony Richardson just isn't a good passer. As much as I like their connection together, it's just like, I'm not confident in it. And he said, no, pretty much everyone that said that asked about Josh Downs, he said to start him, said to not lose faith, that Josh Downs and Anthony Richardson, that connection is strong, and Josh Downs can still get there. And he reminded me that Josh Downs' best game this season came with Anthony Richardson as quarterback. So I just want to say shout out Dustin and third and downs. Good call. And man, it is also like a certain level of sweetness, right? Where honestly, I dislike Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to say hate, it is what it is, but I really do dislike Aaron Rodgers. And I had a very strong take when they got Devontae Adams. I said, they're a poverty franchise. They're not going to make the playoffs. There's no reason for them to do this. Really hateful. And it's very, very sweet to see them lose, to back that up, right? That they're just not a playoff team. But also to see them get fantasy points. I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad. 22 of 29, 2 passing touchdowns. I mean, hey, right? Devontae Adams, 6 of 72. Breece Hall, 2 touchdowns. We take it. And we especially take it when they also take a loss, right? Like, we just, just doing everything they can to fight. But, guys, Devontae Adams was not going to save your organization. And why they thought he would, I just don't get it. And we're not being saved of it either, because this is just making Aaron Rodgers want to play some more. Says he wants to play next year. It's crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Anyway, we got more takeaways. I'm going to play a very quick ad. Hopefully we have a quick one. My nose is kind of itching, to be completely honest with you. And I'm struggling. As you can see, my eyes starting to water. So here's some more on Fast Draft.
Drafting is the best part of fantasy football, and drafting fast is what Fast Draft is all about. Fast Draft is the fastest best ball app on the planet. With just 6 rounds and a 20-second time clock, you can draft in under 10 minutes. Don't have 10 minutes? Use Turbo Mode to create teams with a click of a button. We love volume players, and volume players love Fast Draft because we make it exponentially easier to max enter 150 lineups, and if a tournament you love does fill, don't worry, we'll roll out another one the next day, because we focus just on the players you care about. In April and May, our Origins tournaments are rookie only because the NFL Draft is the second most popular event in American sports after the Super Bowl. Fast Draft tracks player ownership in real time, so you can always see your exposure at a glance in the draft room, and there's no position restrictions. And the best part of that is you never have to draft a tight end. With only 60 players drafted, there are 2 key ways to get unique. You draft players well above or below ADP, or shake up your boosters. The boosters let you set 4 players with point multipliers up to 2x, so you can improve your chances of being unique by putting premiums on later round picks. Okay, that's what Fast Draft's all about. Now start your engines.
The nose has been itched. And speaking of scratching that itch, seriously, scratch that itch. Play Fast Draft. It's very, very fun. Incredible, incredible game. And I really, really do. I'm enjoying this DFS contest. I know it's only been out for 1 week, but I'm excited for week 12. And speaking of the 1 week that has been out, this Pittsburgh Ravens game, not much to talk about in terms of the Ravens, but Derrick Henry. Right? I mean, it was a fine game, whatever. But Derrick Henry, just keeping that touchdown streak alive. Love to see it. Derrick Henry on a incredible, incredible pace. I am curious if Dan Williamson, we had Dan Williamson on, he came on and said that he'll probably break Eric Dickerson's record of over 2,000 rush yards and all that stuff. I don't know if he's on pace, but I still like the take. I think he could still get there. Need a couple huge games from him. Keeping the touchdown streak alive as well. I think he's up to 15 touchdowns, which is awesome. At least he'll get over 20. But shout out Derrick Henry, keeping it alive. And Pittsburgh, keeping it alive as well. Russell Wilson doesn't even play that well. 200 yards, 1 interception, no touchdowns. But they won somehow. So, hey, shout out the Steelers. I want to say this right now as well. We talk about buying Will Levis. I want to go ahead and say buy Justin Fields again. I know I'm a broken clock, right? Broken record, whatever. But I'm going to keep saying buy Justin Fields. I'm not giving up on him. I think we saw a lot from him earlier this season. I think he's still a good quarterback. I think he can still get it done. I think he can still score his fantasy points. And yes, this is only one game, but, we might have a little bit, not this season. I think that Russell Wilson at this point is going to close out the season as the Steelers starter. But I think that Justin Fields is going to get re-signed to be the Pittsburgh starter next year. Call me crazy. And it might be Russell Wilson and Justin Fields again, maybe. But I don't know, maybe. I'm starting to think that at the very least, I think we're going to see Justin Fields again. And we're seeing a little bit of Russell Wilson cracks begin to form. It might be because, now they have more tape on him as Pittsburgh Steeler, what they're trying to do. So, I could see if Russell Wilson struggles rest of season. Again, I still think he's going to start rest of season. But if he struggles, I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe want to just go to Justin Fields next year. So I want to recommend buying Justin Fields right now while I'm thinking about it. I think it's interesting. And interesting is the Falcons, right? We talk about victory laps here. We talked about the Atlanta Falcons a lot this offseason as it pertains to the Kirk Cousins move. And my way of phrasing the Kirk Cousins move was, it's the most Atlanta Falcons move of all time. That the Falcons are going to look great, but either something's going to happen to Kirk Cousins or they're going to make the playoffs and lose immediately. It's going to basically be, they get their hopes up and then they disappoint. And that's what we're starting to see now from Atlanta. Now, back-to-back disappointing performances. Kirk Cousins, no touchdowns. And we even saw Michael Penix come into the game. Drake London struggled. Talked about sitting Drake London on the start-sit show. So, kind of worked. Still a good game. As I talked about, right, I said you'll probably still have a fine game, but it's definitely a floor game. If you have a fun option out there, just take it. But the cracks are beginning to form in Atlanta. And this is why I'm beginning to get worried about Michael Penix. Not that I don't think Michael Penix is good. But as we talk about every single first-round quarterback hitting, right? Every single one being a success. There's only 2 left that I think we could say could bust. I think Caleb Williams is fine. I know a lot of people still think Caleb Williams could bust. I think he's fine. I think he proved it this week. There's J.J. McCarthy. But, he's in Minnesota. And I don't know. I think I could succeed as quarterback in Minnesota. Right? I think I could go out there and throw for at least a couple thousand yards over the season. But Michael Penix in Atlanta, it would be the most Atlanta Falcons thing. Even more Atlanta Falcons than spending $200 million on a 36-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles tear that's never won a playoff game. Would be spending $200 million on a 36-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles tear that's never won a playoff game. And then using a top 10 draft pick to draft his backup replacement quarterback in the future for him to also then bust. That is the most Atlanta Falcons thing possible. And so I'm not going to lie, I'm beginning to get a little bit worried. But that isn't analysis, right? All things point towards Michael Penix being good. He looked fine in this game, 2 of 4, 24 yards. And I still firmly believe that every first-round quarterback was a hit. But if there is to be a bust from this class, it would be so Atlanta Falcons for it to be Michael Penix. And speaking of the first-round quarterbacks being a hit, Bo freaking Nix. .307 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. receptions. Cortland Sutton gets there. Lil Jordan Humphrey gets there. Marvin Mims gets there. Devon Vele gets there. Troy Franklin gets there. Nate Adkins gets there. Awesome performance from Bo Nix. And I don't think he's going to do it, but he's at least going to make a case, and we're going to have a media frenzy about this. Bo Nix versus Jaden Daniels, offensive rookie of the year. I already know the media is going to go crazy for it. You already know it too. It's going to be Jaden Daniels. But it is going to be fun to watch, right? Like, that is going to be the thing to watch rest of the season as it pertains to that race, right? Bo Nix versus Jaden Daniels for offensive rookie of the year. That's what it is. It's not going to be Caleb Williams at this point. It's going to be Jaden Daniels. We know that. But if you want to have an underdog horse in this race, throw a fun little bet. Bo Nix is your horse. See what happens. You know, they have very similar passing numbers, but Bo Nix is losing definitely in the rushing department. It's really going to come down to how these teams end their season. Both of them on pace for the playoffs, right? So it's an interesting race. It's more than likely going to be Jaden Daniels, but Bo Nix is damn sure making a push. And one last victory lap here, of course. Of course, we were all overreacting to Audric Estime. And of course, we should stick with my original take all season that I keep losing conviction in, that I'm no longer losing conviction in. I'm done. I'm done. I don't want the Broncos backfield. I've been saying it all off season. And then like 1 week, I'm like, oh, you could pick up Jaleel McLaughlin. And then I'm like, oh, well, I never said anything about Javonte. I said sell Javonte. But, oh, you should pick up Audric Estime. Oh, you know, Jaleel McLaughlin's at least worth a stash, you know, like, no Broncos running backs. We're done. It's over. We're done. And speaking of done, the 49ers might be done. The 49ers might be done. Geno Smith puts the team on his back. Not even a good passing day. Only 200 yards, no passing touchdowns, and an interception. But goes down the field, game-winning drive, runs it in, back-to-back scrambles, kills it, gives Jackson Smith and Jigba a massive game, 10 of 11, 110 yards. Kenneth Walker gets the touchdown as well. Proud of myself as well as we stick to the victory lap theme here. The Seattle Seahawks offense. I was one of very few people that very, very staunchly recommended drafting Kenneth Walker, recommended drafting Jackson Smith and Jigba, recommended drafting DK Metcalf as well. And this is playing out almost exactly as I expected. Heavy lean on Kenneth Walker, but also letting Geno Smith sling it, not only out of shotgun, but in play action too. Just awesome stuff from the Seahawks. Love this offense a lot right now. JSN breakout is finally here. And I hope as many people as possible that listen to the show was able to get him. And yeah. And while the 49ers season is trending towards being done, the buy window for Christian McCaffrey is very much not done. You can very much still buy Christian McCaffrey in fantasy if you're a contender, and I highly recommend it. Christian McCaffrey now is back-to-back weeks having literally all the opportunity. I don't care about the 2 touches that have gone elsewhere. He's getting it all. He has not had a ceiling game yet, though. Has not had the touchdowns. They're coming, though. And the 49ers, especially as they get more desperate, are going to continue to rely upon him. So Christian McCaffrey is legit. He's healthy, and he's killing it. So if you could get him, I would. Christian McCaffrey, buy while you still can. And then in the very next game, Buffalo versus Kansas City. Josh Allen did his best Geno Smith impression, puts the Bills on his back, game-winning drive, rushes it in for the game-winning touchdown, gets it done, has the passing touchdown, has the rushing touchdown. Khalil Shakir gets there, Curtis Samuel gets there. Dawson Knox has an okay game. Everyone comes and steps up. James Cook gets you there. James Cook killed it in this game, a couple touchdowns, despite having not many yards. He's going to get you there no matter what, whether it's yards or touchdowns. James Cook finds a way. But Josh Allen finds a way, ending the Kansas City perfect season, doing his best Geno Smith impression. We love to see it, and love to see how right I was again on the Bills offense. Said there was no alpha, and damn sure there is no alpha. Everyone steps up here. The only alpha is Josh Allen. And man, again, look, we're saying it. Chiefs are not making the Super Bowl. We all know it. Too many people think it's still going to happen. It's not going to happen. And this game shows why. When they're up against the Bills, or one of these other teams, really, for that matter. Another one we'll be talking about later as well. They just are not going to win in the playoffs, at least. I don't think it's going to happen this year. But damn, I kind of lost conviction in Xavier Worthy again. Back to the conviction, because I was buying Xavier Worthy where I could, trying to get him, still playing him even despite bad performances, because he's boomer bust. And finally, I was like, you know what? DeAndre Hopkins is playing well. Travis Kelce's getting a ton of volume. I'm curious how Juju Smith-Schuster will look. Xavier Worthy's not getting any volume. I'm sitting him. I even dropped him in one of my shallower leagues, which I'm very mad at myself in. It's like, it's just not happening this year. And then, of course, he goes off. And somehow Travis Kelce does nothing. DeAndre Hopkins barely does anything as well. So, just goes to show, again, you can't lose conviction. And you got to remember sometimes that players are boom or bust. And Xavier Worthy is one of those. He's awesome. He is still awesome. So, hopefully you bought him. I would argue, I know that sometimes people say, oh, don't buy high. I would argue that this is an okay time to buy high on Xavier Worthy. I think this will be one of those cases where his value actually hasn't gone up that much, but managers are willing to sell because they're selling high, quote unquote, right? Like, oh, we had a big game, it's time to sell. I'll put him on the block. But I don't think that's the case. I think it's worth buying him. I think he'll be good. And the final game was this Chargers-Bengals game. And my Super Bowl take might be coming down. I did feel that the Bengals would make a Super Bowl push. Just felt that they'd be one of those teams that would get hot at the right time and just win all their games and just go on a crazy hot wild card streak, make the Super Bowl. But they just keep losing. They just keep losing these epic shootouts, and you can't make the playoffs if you lose. As good as you are, I don't care if you lose good games. You're still not making the playoffs, Cincinnati. So I really hope you go on a tear, because you're awesome to watch. I mean, Joe Burrow is killing it right now. Another 300-yard game with 3 touchdowns. T. Higgins in his first game back, 148 yards and a touchdown. Jamar Chase scores twice. Chase Brown still killing it. I mean, this is an awesome, awesome offense to watch. But they're just losing. So I hope they pick up some wins, because I want more Bengals games. Shout out to Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. And shout out the Chargers. Again, one of my big takes this offseason was to buy Justin Herbert. Do not give up on Justin Herbert. Everyone was like, oh, Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman, they're going to run the ball a lot. There's no room for passing efficiency. What are you talking about? Like, Andrew Luck won a Heisman. A quarterback won a Heisman with him as the coach of Stanford. The weapons are kind of there. And Justin Herbert is just one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's going to end up being good. And now we're seeing it. Just week after week now. I think this is 3 straight weeks in a row where he has actually had over 20 fantasy points, almost 300 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. But the big thing there that we talked about, right, was Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh, they like using their quarterback on the run, and that's something we haven't seen Justin Herbert in a while. And he had 65 rush yards in this game. They have design runs. They're going to let him use his wheels. It was going to take some time this year because of his injury, but now we're in the second half of the season. He's healed. And this team is relying on him. It's awesome. So shout out Justin Herbert. And hopefully you bought him like I told you to. Everyone, that will do it. Would love to answer questions, but we've already gone forever. Thank you, as always, so much for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow with some waiver advice, so make sure you tune into that. Everyone, I hope you have a magnificent Monday, a great day in general. Just have a fantastic day, guys, and a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you tomorrow. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com. Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, Data Analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.